I got to get back in the tanning bed, Jack. I'm awful white.
We're live. We're live here, Frank. Okay.
This is a presentation of Northeast Streaming Sports.
If you like the sweet science, get ready to talk boxing on the Gloved Fist podcast with top boxing writers Frank Latirzo and Jack Hirsch. Frank, a former amateur boxer out of Philadelphia, writes for NY Fights and can be seen on the Boxing Channel. Jack, an amateur boxer who competed in the New York Golden Gloves, was a 6-term president of the Boxing Writers Association. And now, here's Frank Latirzo and Jack Hirsch.
And we're back. Welcome to Glove Fist. My name is Frank Latirzo, former writer, full-time observer, joined by Jack Hirsch, former 6-term president of the Boxing Writers Association of America. Jack, how are you tonight? How was your holiday? And tell us about our guests.
Holiday was good, and last week we had a great guest in Christy Martin. And Frank, kudos to you. You asked her the best possible questions. And Christy, the movie's out with Christy Martin. And tonight we follow up. Bryce Mills, excellent junior welterweight. Some people use the term super lightweight, but you're like me, I think, Frank.
Junior welter.
We like to use the term junior welterweight. And he's 21-1. 21-1, excellent prospect, managed by Russell Peltz. And people out there are going to say, well, Peltz is a promoter. Peltz was a promoter, a great one. He's in the International Hall of Fame for his promotional achievements, but he associates himself as a manager now. He handles a few fighters. Bryce Mills is the most prominent of all of them. And Bryce Mills is, inching towards his way towards a world rating. He hasn't fought any big names of note. But, he's going to get there. We had some really big news that came out today, Frank, in the boxing world. We certainly have something to talk about, and it's not the Lamont Roach-Isaac Cruz fight this weekend. But this is a massive fight. Teofimo Lopez, whose dad we had on this show a few weeks ago, against Shakur Stevenson. Now, that is one of the biggest fights that could be made in boxing. Were you surprised, that fight was made?
Jack, I mean, today I'm always surprised when we see a fight between two guys that are on the same career trajectory and two guys that are, champions, former champions that are moving along. Look, Jack, I'm excited about it. It's a 50-50 fight. And the fact is, eventually these guys have to step up and fight each other. And hopefully that they get that message. It's a great style contrast between one guy who's going to box and use the ring and another guy who's going to try to impose himself physically. Both young guys, both in their prime. Teofimo hasn't been as consistent, but this is the type fight he will get up for. I believe they're fighting at 135. I think that helps Shakur a little bit, but I don't think it's a game changer. Unmute, Jack.
Predicting this fight is simple to me, very simple. If the Teofimo Lopez who beat Vasily Lomachenko, that exact version shows up, he's going to beat Shakur Stevenson. Any other version of Teofimo Lopez is going to lose to Shakur Stevenson. So the question is, Frank, can Teofimo regain that form from years ago? He's young enough, but something has been missing. He's had some good wins. He looked good beating Josh Taylor. He looked good beating an unbeaten Arnold Barboza. Really good wins. He's looked good in a couple of other fights. But there's some fights he looked erratic in.
Well, Jack, that's a simple question to answer, because if he can't get up for this fight, he should get out of the sport. I mean, this is the biggest fight for him since Lomachenko. He looked tremendous in that fight. He's going to be up against the same type guy this time, and a guy that is quick, stronger than he looks, tricky guy that's good at shutting people down and, making you look bad, making you miss, frustrating you. But as you said, Teofimo, I think if he can impose himself physically and dictate with his jab so he can set up other things and keep Shakur on the back foot, even though he can fight that way, I think that, he has a shot. I can't pick a winner yet. I'm just glad that the fight is official because let's face it, Jack, the loser's taking a step back. Shouldn't be that case, but that's the way it is.
It puzzles me why Teofimo Lopez didn't fight Devin Haney instead. I think Shakur Stevenson is a much harder fight because Devin Haney's chin is in question. We have to assume Shakur Stevenson can take a good punch. We have to assume that. He's never really gotten hit. We've never seen him gotten hurt. But the Ryan Garcia fight, let's forget the cheating with Garcia, making the weight, the steroids, all that talk. The point is, Haney's chin showed some chinks in it several times, when he went down 3 times officially, a couple of times more.
He was in trouble more than 3 times.
Right, exactly. And Devin Haney also kind of shuts down late in the fight, even in his win over Brian Norman. He wasn't impressive the second half of the fight. He looked great the first half. But the second half.
And he didn't close strong versus Lomachenko either.
No, he didn't close. No, he didn't. And but listen, the money has to be there. I mean, the Lopezes are very confident. I'm hoping I could get Teofimo on the show before the fight, as well to talk about it. But it's big. Somehow, I think for Shakur Stevenson, he has to look at it as his coming out party. If he wins this fight and wins it clearly, he's absolutely on pound for pound lists. And I don't mean he sneaks into the top 10. I mean, you could maybe be talking about him potentially top 5, even though that's a hard thing to break the top 5 because you got Crawford, you got Usyk, you got Inoue, and you got Bam Bam Rodriguez. It's going to be kind of hard to pass any of those guys. But maybe the number 5.
If he has a good showing, he would be the next tier after them.
Oh, right. Or maybe he could latch on to that tier, be like in the back of the bus. Maybe not be given a seat, but, he could hold on to the rail or whatever, but be on the same bus as those guys, or on the back seat of the car, whatever. How you want to describe it. But Teofimo, Frank, his career, something about the way I don't want to say managed. He never got the bang out of the Lomachenko victory that he should have. He should have been a major star. He's charismatic, unbeaten. He should have been
He has very good wins. Other than that bad night against Kambosa, he has good wins. I mean, big wins. He took apart Josh Taylor, which surprised me how easily he did that. And look, I thought he beat Lomachenko. I didn't think there was any doubt about it. We could argue, was it 7-5 or 8-4? But he clearly won the fight.
But there were a couple of fights, Frank, that people forget about. Jermaine Ortiz, okay, fighter from the Connecticut area, and Sander Martin, guys who just ran around the ring all fight long, and he had a lot of problems with them.
That's why I said, Jack, he's inconsistent.
But he was unimpressive. But there's an X factor involved. Turkey, his excellency. He wants guys who are going to fight. If Shador, I was going to say Shador Sanders. I'm not in the football frame of mind. Shador Stevenson. If Shador Stevenson fights a very conservative fight, keeps away from him, just boxes, never exchanges, and it's a boring fight, it won't go over well with His Excellency. He's made it clear. I'm paying good money. I want good fights. It doesn't mean he expects Stevenson to go toe-to-toe. That would be ludicrous. But he expects him to mix it up at times. He expects him to make the fight entertaining.
Jack, I agree with that. However, let's face it. The onus is on Lopez to bring that out of him and make him do that. Forget about what Turkey wants. The onus is on Lopez to make it a fight and not allow Shakur to dictate the range and the pace of the fight. So if Lopez can impose his power and his punch and make Shakur fight him off and not allow him to be boxed, then we'll have a fight. And let's face it, it's simple. It's a simple plan. That's what Lopez has to do. He can't give Shakur the time and the space to lillygag and pick his spots. And when he wants to flurry, win. No, he has to force him to actually fight him off. That isn't Teofimo so much, Jack, because Teofimo is a boxer puncher, but in this fight, he has to push it.
The fight's at 140, Frank, now 135. Lopez
It is a 140?
On the line. Yeah, Lopez can't make 135 anymore. I kind of wonder why Lopez is even fighting at 140 now, because making weight isn't easy for him at all. And, I like Teofimo Lopez Sr., and I mean this in a good way. He's been all over the place talking about who Teofimo would fight before this fight. I mean, at one point, they were calling out
Crawford.
I mean, Crawford meant a big payday, a big reward. Boots Ennis didn't mean a big reward, yet they were calling out the most feared guy.
I never believed that, Jack. I thought it was bluster the whole time, and I told that to Teofimo Sr.
But Boots Ennis never said he'd fight him. So as far as it's bluster, if Boots would have said, okay, let's negotiate, and then they backed off.
Jack, but Boots knew better. He knew the fight wasn't going to happen. Do you remember years ago when Mayweather was calling out Winky Wright, and then Winky Wright said, okay, and then he said Mayweather offered him like a 70-30 split, and what Wright said, okay, and then Mayweather went quiet. Is that what you expect Boots to have done?
No, well, it's not about Boots. I'm just saying this is about Teofimo showing he would fight anyone out there. I mean, who's the most feared man in and around his division? It is Shakur Stevenson because of what you said before, his shutdown style. No one is better at shutting an opponent down than him. He's been the best shutdown fighter since Pernell Whitaker. Whitaker would shut
and Mayweather.
Down. And Mayweather, correct. I'm sorry. No disrespect to Mayweather. Yeah, so there's a certain category of fighters who are not even big punchers. Whitaker couldn't punch. Mayweather couldn't punch. Shakur Stevenson, I'm not sure yet how to evaluate.
I think they're both better punchers than he is pound for pound. Whitaker had a good jab, and when he sat down, he could pop some. I mean, he could pop hard enough to get your attention. He wasn't a life taker. And Mayweather at 30 and 35, when he sat down and put them together, he had some pop too. I think more than Shakur does at the weight. But Shakur, he knows what his strengths are, and he knows in this fight he's got to do somewhat what Leonard did to Hagler. If he can do that and pick his spots and flurry and just get in enough and make Lopez be second on every exchange, he'll do well.
Yeah. Also, I mentioned the form that Lopez might show going into the fight. You wonder a little about Shakur Stevenson. I mean, I think he's in his prime right now. He'll be fine. We'll see the best version of him. But the lack of big fights, you'd think he'd go a little stale. He fought William Cepeda in his last fight over the summer, and he looked really good. But Cepeda's not a puncher. He's just a guy with a high work rate, and he can diffuse guys with a high work rate. What happens if he fights a fighter like Lopez, hits him a big left hook, a big right hand, and shakes him up? I mean, the old axiom that we hear about, everyone has a plan until they get hit, could actually come into play in a fight like that. Look, it happened with Devin Haney and Ryan Garcia. Again, I know about the extracurricular activities that contribute.
And Garcia's a big puncher, Jack, with his left hand.
But the point is, what happens if Stevenson is all of a sudden in a dogfight? Can Lopez cut the ring off on him?
I mean, I hope he can. I don't know. I don't know. I don't think that's his forte. I think he likes guys to lead. and not be countered. I think this time he's going to have to lead. And to do that, he's going to have to cut the ring off because he just can't reach for him the whole fight because he'll get peppered and countered at will if he does that. I think he's got it. He has to do what Hagler didn't quite do to Leonard because the foot movement gave him a hard time. And I think, like Hagler, I think that Teofimo, Jack, is a boxer puncher. And I think they like it when you go to them. Leonard didn't go to Hagler. Duran didn't go to Hagler. He didn't look so great against them. Same thing with Teo. When you go to him, he's at his best. When he has to come to you, sometimes he looks like he's a little lost in the woods, and this is the last guy you want to show that against.
Yeah,
hello, Vince Mills.
Vince Mills? Who's Vince Mills? Bryce Mills, you mean?
He's watching us right now.
Oh, okay. Yeah, if they're both on now, let's bring them into the studio. Russell Peltz and Bryce Mills, because Bryce Mills, hey, Russell, your guys are junior welterweight, and this is, I know, hey, let me say hello to Bryce. I see a big B there. I know I'm not the greatest with technology, so I forgive Bryce if we don't see him.
How you doing, Russell?
I'm doing great.
Yeah, I mean, of course, Russell's trying to pad Bryce Mills' record with easy fights. Only kidding, Bryce. I like to give digs to Russell.
Russell, I have your back there. I looked at Bryce's record, and in 21 fights, he only fought 3 guys that were under 500. So you're not picking him for him. You're making him earn his keep. How you doing, Bryce?
How's it going, guys? Appreciate you guys having me.
You know, Bryce, what's interesting, too, the one fight you lost on a split decision, it looked bad at the time, but certain things age well. Because the guy who beat you, you know, he was on a terrible run going into the fight, but after he got the decision over you, he hasn't lost since. He's won his last 8. So all of a sudden, he's like a different fighter, but maybe he got that added confidence. How is there going to be a rematch, Russell, or the one loss, or what?
No, I don't think so. You know, when I was younger, I used to think that you had to avenge every loss. But that was actually an impressive loss at the time for Bryce, because up to that point, before I got involved, and I was not involved then, he'd been buying all his fights. If you look, when you see a fighter from New York fighting in South Carolina and Florida and Georgia, you know that they're paying their own way. It doesn't make sense for the promoter to use them otherwise. And a lot of people actually were impressed with the fact that that was a split decision, because Bryce was pretty inexperienced as a pro. Ryan Pino had been around, and he is on a run right now. But I got to tell you something, Frank. You say I brought him along. Bryce has made a lot of those decisions. There were a lot of fights that Bryce had that I was very leery of. But his trainers told me not to worry, so I went along with the program. But Bryce is one of those rare kids that doesn't want to fight fighters with losing records because he doesn't want to be a career fighter.
When you look at guys, Russell, you know as well as anybody, a lot of times when guys are on their way up, their record is stacked with guys that are 1-14, 2-12. I looked at his record, and it's like he has not been fed soft touches. And to that, Bryce, I watched a couple of your fights. I watched is it the Jeff Nyote fight?
Yes. Yeah, I believe that was a couple of years ago, 1.5 years at this point. Yeah.
Okay, and I'm sure you've improved since then. But I have to admit, I like your fundamentals. I like how you keep everything tight, your chin down, you don't waste many punches. I thought you looked good in that fight, and I'll tell you what, Nyote was a very good fighter. The guy was a 3-time Golden Glove champ, and I could just tell by watching him in with you that he was a real opponent. He wasn't an opponent be there just to pad your record. He came to win, and he had some skills.
Thank you very much. And you know, those are the fights that I want to have, because at the end of the day, if I'm fighting a guy who doesn't deserve to be in the ring with me, that's not going to get me any better. And I'm a fighter that I didn't have the amateur careers that a lot of these guys had. So I'm learning on the job. And, you know, I think Russell understands that. And I know it makes him nervous at times. But at the end of the day, he's got us all these amazing opportunities against some very good fighters with very good records that are big wins for me, and fights that are only going to continue to help me get better and put me in the right place and allow me to reach my goal, which eventually is one day a world title.
You know, Bryce, I got to thank you because I was at this show at the Turning Stone Casino last June that you ended in the first round, so I was able to get out early because these shows usually end way too late. So I was kind of glad about that. When Russell was a promoter, he would move the fights along. You know, you don't want to get out midnight or so on. But
I agree.
the thanks, you know, for ending that one early. Not you're from Liverpool, not Liverpool, England, Liverpool, upstate New York.
That's right.
Okay. And being a pro fighter your stature in a small town, how much does it mean to the people there? Because when I interviewed Tommy Hicks, I don't know if you're familiar with him. He was from Utica, New York, a fighter who fought Bob Forster for the world light heavyweight title. He told me how important it was to the, you know, people in upstate Utica, New York, you know, to have him in their presence. What does it mean to the people in Liverpool, you know, for you to succeed?
You know, I think it means a lot to the people in Liverpool. If you've been to my fights, and I know you said you were at the Turning Stone,
Yeah.
and I just had a fight recently, which I was lucky enough to actually have in Liverpool. All of my fights locally, we've had amazing turnouts. We've had from all ages of 5 years old to, you know, older men. Everybody comes out, they show their support, and they want to see me succeed. Because at the end of the day, like you said, there's not many people doing it from this area, but there's a lot of boxing fans, and there's a big boxing culture from upstate New York. You got the Hall of Fame in Canastota. You got greats like Carmen Basilio, Frank Lyles, and we even have a rising prospect out of Syracuse too, and Amir Anderson, who's doing very well in the pros so far. So there's a big boxing culture in this area, and everybody just wants to see me succeed. So, you know, I can possibly pave the way for some other up and comers out of Syracuse.
Is it a little harder to get sparring located where you're? Russell's a Philadelphia guy. You get more than enough quality work in the gym there. And Frank's a Philly guy too. I'm a New York guy, more than enough quality sparring, you know, in the various gyms. But where you're located, do you get quality sparring there when you need it?
You know what? I'm fortunate enough to have a team around me where I can find some very quality sparring partners that have helped me get to this point. But I also have to travel a little bit. I do spend my training camps and my time 2 days a week. I go out to Rochester, New York, where we have phenomenal boxers around my weight class, amateurs and professionals. I believe there's 3 amateurs in the top 5 in the nation from 138 to I want to say 45, 47. So right around my weight class, and they're top 5 in the nation. So if you know boxing, you know that those guys are as talented as some of these very high level pros. And among those guys, we also have some very talented pros in the Buffalo, Rochester area. And then, you know, I'm in Syracuse, so I'm in a sweet spot where I can go to Rochester and I can also go to Albany. I go to Albany and I spar with some very high level pros as well out there. So I'm in a good spot and I have a lot of good sparring near me. It's getting me to where I got to go.
Bryce, let me ask you a question. How did you develop your style? When I watched you fight, I consider you a boxer puncher. Where you're not a mauler and brawler. You don't look for one shot, but your fundamentals are really good.
Thank you.
Where does that come from? Because you look like you have some Aguayo in you, where everything is just where it should be and concise, and there's not many wasted shots. I mean, is that something you really concentrate on? Is that part of your style that your team works with, keeping those fundamentals?
Yeah, that's always been something that has been important to me, you know, staying fundamentally sound. Because at the end of the day, at this high level that I'm at right now in boxing, it takes one mistake. It takes one fundamental mistake, and you're fighting a big puncher, they'll put your lights out. So
one little thing makes a big difference. The only thing I noticed in that fight a little bit, and like you said, it was 2 years ago in the beginning of the fight, your hands were up. Around the 4th round, they came down a little bit.
Oh, no doubt. And, you know, not to make any excuses, but I was not very happy. I think Russell remembers of that performance to date. But we've learned a lot and we've grown since.
Right.
physically, I didn't feel great going into that fight, but like I said, I'm learning on the job, and I feel like I'm improving with every single fight. So you need experiences like that to grow and to become better.
Now
No fighter will admit to this, so I'm not going to ask you this. I'm just going to put it this way:
Of course,
are you comfortable at 140? Is that pretty much your weight for a while?
I am comfortable at 140. Until I accomplish something, win a title, get my name where I want to be in the weight class, then I'll think about moving up, going to 147. But for now, I'm very comfortable at 140 pounds, and I want to stay there for as long as possible.
Bryce, there's a reason I'm asking you this question. What's the name of your division? What's it called? Not the. Don't tell me one.
The weight class?
Yeah, no, yeah. What's the name of it?
So junior welterweight is what I say. I know.
Good for you.
That's what I say too.
Because us old timers know it as junior welterweight, and I hate to hear the term super lightweight.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I could have sworn you were going to say super lightweight, but you came in line. Good.
I have a question for Russell. Russell, not going to give your age away. We know how long you've been in the business and all the fighters you've been associated with. What is it about Bryce Mills that brings you out of your semi-retirement to work with him?
Trust. We're on the same page. We make decisions unilaterally together. I'll be nervous or say I don't want to fight that guy, and Bryce's trainers will say, "Don't worry, we got this." And I'll tell you this: we have a handshake agreement. There's nothing on paper. My wife drives me crazy, but it's not going to make a difference in my life financially if one day Bryce wakes up and decides not to pay me after a fight. What am I going to do? Sue him? I'm going to be, here's my age. I'm going to be 79 next week. Okay. And I'm fortunate at this point in my career that I can have a relationship like this because, when the relationship between a promoter and a fighter is light years from the relationship between a journalist and a fighter. The journalist is writing about the fighter, so the fighter loves it. Well, I'm a manager now, but as a promoter, you're always fighting to get the fighter for the lowest price you can, and the fighter is fighting to get for the highest price. So I don't have that problem with Bryce and his family.
Oh, by the way, Russell, you mentioned your age. Keep in mind that Bob Arum and Don King are both 15 years older than you, and both of them are still promoting. So,
but I started. Arum is the only current promoter who started before I did. I started before King.
How would Bryce have played out in the old days in Philadelphia? He'd come into a gym, he'd be located there. What would you have done with him if you were promoting him at that time? Because you threw guys in tough at that time. You did.
Listen, I have
not that he doesn't have tough fights now, but you threw him in tough.
That's why I don't promote anymore, because you can't make those kind of fights anymore. I'm torn between Bryce's attitude toward wanting to fight good fighters, better fighters, higher ranked fighters, and the fact that we have a rare situation in boxing today where we actually have a fighter who draws big in his own hometown, like Pazienza did in Cranston, Rhode Island, like Mancini did in Youngstown, Ohio, like even a guy like Kenny Keene in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho years ago as a cruiserweight. So I'd like to explore that more and see how much we can develop thousands of people to come and see him fight, as long as I'm not the promoter.
Bryce, today it was announced Shakur Stevenson's fighting Teofimo Lopez. That's your division. That's a massive, massive fight. You're very far away from those guys, at least you're some distance at the present time.
Yep.
But does that inspire you? Does that get your attention? Do you evaluate yourself watching them fight, how you might do against either guy the night of their fight? Are you going to say, how might I have done?
I think I'd be silly not to watch that fight. and not to watch it from a fighter's perspective and a view of one day I'm going to be up against these guys. So at the end of the day, that's where I'm trying to go. So I would be silly not to watch that fight and not to see if maybe 2 years down the road when I'm up in that opportunity, if they're still there, which there's a very good chance they could be, and I got to fight one of them. Of course, I'm studying them and I'm watching their fights. They're both excellent fighters, very skilled. I think it's going to be an excellent fight. But at the end of the day, these are the fights that boxing needs, that my weight class needs. Because at the end of the day, these fights are only helping me. Fans are coming in, they're watching these fights, and it's bringing more attention to my division. So that's all positive. Those are all positive things for me, and I'll definitely be tuned in for that one.
Your image, how concerned are you with that? I mean, I know all fighters are to an extent, but in a different way. Some of them want to create a bad boy image. Some want to be quiet, refined. How important is it to you? Because it's hard to hold your tongue in this sport because an opponent's going to bring it out of you. You know, with taunting, acting a certain way.
I am who I am. You know, a lot of people like to put in a show. They like to sell fights, and that's understandable. To me, if I try to sell a fight and I try to talk some crap, it would just come off as really corny. And honestly, people wouldn't want to see it. So I think being myself, being genuine, and, you know, being the hard worker from Syracuse, New York, who's came up with no amateur career and has built his way from the ground up is my image and is exactly who I am. And I'm going to stick to that lingo. I'm going to stick to that persona. And, you know, I'll take it one fight at a time and see where that can take me.
Now, Russell, does he have a particular promoter right now?
No. No.
Eventually, I'm sure you've discussed it with Bryce as he works his way up the ladder. Eventually, that's going to have to get resolved, I would think.
I'd like to stay independent as long as I can.
And
what promoter out there do I really want to do business with? I mean, I always had a great relationship with Top Rank, and I think for my entire career, they've been the best promoter in the business, but they're in hiatus right now. I thought I've been talking to Christy Martin, who I love and I trust.
We had on the show last week. She was our guest.
And she's making some deals out in California. And for a while, I thought she was going to get a show at Turning Stone in the first quarter of 26, but it didn't happen. But as long as we can either cherry pick or be cherry picked and be the franchise in upstate New York, I think it's so much fun. And I don't want to it's not that I'm in control, but I don't want to lose. I don't want to be told when we're fighting, who we're fighting, and how much we're getting. And I don't see a promoter out there that right now, other than Christy Martin, that I would really want to lock in with, that would have our best interests at heart and not just use it when they go to Turning Stone to sell tickets. Because we can do that ourselves, but after what we just went through a few weeks ago, changing venues on 7 days notice, and when I tried to get involved, and when a female bantamweight from Chicago who had 1 win and no losses rejected a female bantamweight from Liverpool who had no wins and 1 loss, I said, this is why I got out of the business. I can't deal with that kind of. And a manager said he had a 52-pounder, and we offered him a 54-pounder, and he said he's too big. I said, okay, Ron Katz, you take it from here.
Bryce, I don't know how to word this, but it's something I like to impress upon younger fighters. And I can tell that you're very enthusiastic, that your head looks like it's on right, and you have a good mindset. Do you understand there's only one thing that you control in your career?
The outcome of my
and I don't mean to put you on the spot. I don't mean to do that.
I control my fights and how I perform in the ring. And at the end of the day, I have an excellent team around me and people that I can trust. like Russell Peltz, like my father, like both of my coaches that make those decisions for me outside of the ring.
You kind of answered my question, but you
Okay.
said your trainer, Russell Peltz, the only thing you control, and I hope you take this with you for the rest of your career and it rings in the back of your head, but the only thing you control, you can't control the decision. A lot of times you can't control your opponent, whatever. The only thing you have control in is what you put into it, how hard you work. And that is the only thing that when you get in the ring and you look across at your opponent, he might have a better trainer, a better promoter, better looking trunks, more money behind him. But the only thing you can control is what you did to get to that point in the ring. And you can look at him and say, you know what? If you beat me, it's going to take everything you have, because what I put into this to get to this moment, you couldn't have outworked me. And I know that sounds kind of like a plateau, but at the end of the day, I don't care who the fighter is, they control one thing, and that is how hard they work and how serious they take it, and understanding what is important, not the color of your trunks, not the song you come out to. It's getting the W.
I couldn't have said it any better myself. That's what I pride myself on, is my hard work, my dedication, and my commitment to this sport. I believe that's the reason I've gotten to the place I'm at with no amateur career. And I believe that's also the reason that one day I'm going to be a world champion, is because of exactly what you said, controlling the controllables and being the best that I can be. And at the end of the day, everything else will fall in place with the great team I have.
Well, I like the way you said that.
Frank, you should have saved that for Leon Spinks and Buster Douglas back in the day. That would have helped. I mean, I'm sure Bryce trains really hard, but it was good to hear that. Bryce, how did you and Russell ever link up to begin with?
So we actually went way back to, I believe it was right after my first loss. I took a fight against a 10-1 Dion Butt in Philadelphia. And I went out, it was his hometown. He was from Philly. I was the kid from upstate New York coming down to his territory and took the fight, ended up getting the win, putting on a good performance. And after the fight, Russell Peltz stopped by the locker room and, what were we going to say? You can't say no to a legend like Russell Peltz. And
a lot of people have, but that's besides the point.
Not this guy. So that's
Bryce, do you realize? I didn't mean to cut you off. I'm sorry.
You're fine.
Do you realize Russell hates everything about boxing now? He thinks everybody today stinks and everything about it is wrong. How do you get along with him?
That's a good question. I still don't know that answer myself. I'm just very lucky to have Russell, and I'm very lucky that he's part of my team because, as you guys know, and as Russell clearly knows, everything in boxing isn't perfect today. I know it's not like the older days. You don't see the great fights. You don't see the number one going against the number two in the division and the big fights that everybody wants to see. But, all I can do is my part and build my career. And when I'm in that position, I got to be ready to put on those fights and do my role.
When did you know you wanted to box?
Man, so I actually got started as a kickboxer at the age of 12 years old. My first fight was a boxing fight just to keep me active because we couldn't find many kickboxers at my age and my weight class.
You have a martial arts background, right?
I do have a martial arts background.
Frank's a martial arts guy.
What did you do in martial arts?
So I started at martial arts at the age of 5. I had my first kickboxing fight and boxing fight at the age of 12.
I mean, is it Taekwondo, Tang Soo?
It's actually Kenpo martial arts.
Kenpo karate, right?
Yes, sir. So
and then the boxing bug bit after that.
Yes. So I love kickboxing, and that's what I've grown up in. But there's really not much of a future in kickboxing, as sad it is to say that. So I turned pro at 17 in kickboxing, had a couple fights, 2 wins under my belt, and then I realized there's really not many places to go. And if I want to do this as a career, and I love the art of fighting and fighting itself, I decided to switch past. So I went to boxing.
When
How
it gets,
hard was it?
it's
No, I was
funny
gonna-
when it gets in your,
Go ahead, Frank.
when it gets in your blood, when boxing is in your blood, like I do Wing Chun and I do judo. And I've been doing them for about 10 years, judo maybe the last 3. And I'll tell you what, I like them a lot, but I boxed for like 4 years, and that was the most fun I had and enjoyed it. There's just something about the sport that when it gets into your blood, it's worse than any addiction.
Oh yeah, I felt that early on, and I'm definitely feeling it the more I'm in this sport. Boxing's like none other. It has the culture of some of the great all-time fighters behind it. Some of my favorites like Roberto Duran, Roy Jones Jr. You see the Mike Tysons, the people that everybody know in this sport, in fighting. You can't really name a great kickboxer of all time. I'm sure people in the sport can, but they're
Joe Louis
Joe
and
Jean
Louis.
Van
Wallace.
Damme,
Right.
was he real?
Yeah,
Who?
it's
Jean
No,
Van
Jack,
Damme?
he's a movie guy.
I don't know. I mean, Bryce nailed it. You can't name
Well,
him,
now you
right?
know,
Like
and he did
Cuddy,
nail
Yeah.
it.
okay, right? Come on.
yeah. So
Right.
that's
But don't
why
believe that myth about the old time guys. They weren't that good.
Oh, well,
No,
I'll tell you one
stop.
kickboxer.
They
one
weren't that good.
One kickboxer made it big, Vitaly Klitschko. Won the
Right.
heavyweight title, kickboxer, which is the next question. How hard is it to make the adjustment? Now you're not allowed to kick a guy in the ring, unless the ref isn't looking and you could get away with it. But how do you make the adjustment, from kickboxing to boxing? It's got
You don't want to get
hard.
disqualified, Jack.
it
That's easy.
is. It's been. I can't lie and say it hasn't been a big adjustment because it clearly has. They're two different sports. I know you're throwing punches, you're using your hands in both sports, but I'd be very silly to tell you that that's the same thing. That's why I say that my room for growth is so high, even at this point, and I can see my career fight by fight. I feel like I've been improving and growing. It's been a huge adjustment, but with my team, with the great fighters I have out in Rochester, the great coaches down there, some of the great guys I'm sparring with in Albany, and some of the great guys in Syracuse, my team, Russell Peltz, my father, Jim Andrello, and my work ethic, which is all I can control. Anything's possible, and I'll get there.
Is there any
Jack, ask your
time-
boy.
I'm sorry.
You're writing a book on Michael Spinks. Ask him about it. When he used to spar Tex Cobb, when they used to go to touch glove, Cobb would throw a round cook over his head.
You can go kick over Mike Spinks' head. And by the way, getting back to what we
That's scary.
talked earlier with Mike Spinks, Russell Peltz promoted one of his fights in Philadelphia. And to show you how things were done back in the day, Michael Spinks was an unbeaten Olympic gold medalist, early in his career. And Peltz matched him with this fighter, Jasper Brisbane, who was unbeaten in 6 fights. So that'll show you back in the day, the quality type matchmaking that was done. I mean, in this day and age, Spinks would have fought someone with a 1-5 record.
And that's why I don't like what's going on. I don't hate boxing, but it's funny because I like those kind of fights, and yet Bryce is the exact opposite of what's going on today. So
He's a throwback.
I'm the one that says, whoa, do we really want to fight this guy?
But
And they
Russell,
say,
Bryce, does he have any type of timeline that you're thinking about, edging into the top 10 with one of the sanctioning bodies? Is it 2 years away? I'm just throwing out a number. It's ignore.
I'm hoping by the end of 26, sometime this coming year.
You think, okay, so within a year, maybe a top 10 position, with one of the sanctioning bodies. Okay.
The sanctioning bodies. It depends on how much money I offer the sanctioning bodies to get him right.
Well, someone is
legitimate
got
top,
to rate him.
legitimate top 10, whether he's ranked or not. I'd say we're within a year. He just had his first 10-round fight. And even though the scores were very wide, which they were, it was an 8-2 fight. It was a hard fight every minute of every round. It was just as hard for me as it was for Bryce.
Bryce, can you could you adjust to this? And Russell, would you allow this to go on? Because I actually think it's a good idea. And whenever I talk to a manager, I bring this up. You keep yourself in tip-top shape, and if an opponent cancels out to save a show and save a semi-big fight, or let's say hypothetically, you're not going to do this at this stage, but Teofimo Lopez, Shakur Stevenson, let's say one of them pulls out of the fight a day or two before, and they just want to keep the show on. You wouldn't get the money they got anywhere close. Let's be honest about it. And Russell, would you pick up the phone and say, I got Bryce Mills? He could give a representative account of himself and actually put him in with one of the guys, and it would be a nice payday, even though nothing like, the guy who pulled out would have gotten. And that's how you maybe get the big opportunity, and maybe, you cash in. I don't mean only for that night, conceivably win a fight like that.
I can see the look on Russell's face. I already know the answer.
Yeah,
and I think I knew the answer before you asked the question, Jack.
Yeah, but it's so hard to get the fights normally, but they'd be in a desperate position needing to save a show sometimes. Like we have a show, for example, Lamont Roach and Isaac Cruz this weekend, the PBC. Okay? You'd have to be a little more advanced. That's what I'm saying. We're talking about 10, 11 months from now.
It would depend. First of all, Bryce, regardless of what I would think, I doubt that Bryce would do it because he's very tuned into a specific training routine. However, you say they wouldn't get the money Lopez or Shakur would get, but he still could get $1 million.
That's what I mean.
$1 million pays a lot of bills.
Exactly. So, Frank, you're wrong. Russell would do it because...
No, I would talk to him about it, and he would make the decision. That's how we do it.
Exactly.
But you'd be ready in the event. And they used to do that back in the day, right, Russell? They sometimes have a standby opponent to train, whatever.
That day doesn't exist anymore,
Jim. But it could be brought back. At what point, Bryce, right now, what do you regard yourself? As a prospect, or are you too advanced to be just a prospect? At what point do you cross over from prospect to contender?
That's a good question. I think it's going to take one of these fights against maybe a top 10 in the nation, a top 10 in my division. I wouldn't say in the nation, a top 10 in my division in the world. Once you beat one of those guys, then there's no doubt about it, you're a contender. And I believe, like Russell said, by the end of 2026, we may have one of those fights lined up. And it's my job to accept that fight and do my job, which is just to win that night.
The message behind Jack's question is always stay in shape and be ready. Do you have a fight? Do you have anything lined up now, Bryce?
So I believe potentially late February, there may be a card at the Turning Stone. Just waiting to hear if that's 100% locked in. So if that's the case, then we may be there. And I hear that there may be a possibility sometime 3 weeks after, which could be at the Garden. And that would be very exciting too. But, whoever makes me the best deal and whatever fight is out there that my team wants to accept, I'm willing to accept any.
So basically, we know that you're not going to go until February at the earliest, right?
Yeah, so I believe it's late February timeframe, if I had to guess.
So let me ask you this. A follow-up to that is,
yes.
Now, the holidays, we're in the middle of the holidays. That's 2-3 months away. What kind of work will you do in between now and then? Will you stay in the gym? Will you continue to spar?
Oh, 100%. My job doesn't really change much, whether I'm in camp or out. To be honest with you, the one thing that I do like to do when I'm outside of camp is I like to eat. I do like my food. I'll get my food in. I'll enjoy myself, but my training schedule stays the same. To be honest with you, I think this is where a lot of the guys in the sport go downhill is they decide to train, turn it up when they're in camp. But the reality of it is you improve and make improvements in your game and on yourself when you're out of training camp. Training camp to me is where I like to focus on my opponent. in the fight itself. This time off is where I improve on my game, and I do the work that's necessary to get there.
Bryce, one of the things I'll say, Russell, you look like you're going to say something. I'll make it quick.
It's okay.
Look, old men like me, Russell, and Jack have some issues with Floyd Mayweather. However, what none of us can disagree on, Floyd Mayweather always stayed in shape. And from the time he turned pro in 1996 until the time he fought Conor McGregor, okay, he never got out of shape one time. And he was not like a James Toney, a guy that he had to go to the camp just to lose weight, to make weight so he could fight, and he could never work on anything or get better. Where Mayweather went into training camp in shape, and he's one of the most successful fighters of your era, maybe any era. And that is the one thing, as many problems as I have with Floyd on different things, that is the one thing I have the utmost respect for him regarding how he conducted his career and how serious he took it. And he never got out of shape.
You're right. You're right. 100%. I've seen that with him in the past. I've watched, I'm a big boxing history guy. I like to watch all the documentaries and all of his HBO specials on his training camps and his fights. And that's one thing that I've seen with Floyd in the past that, is hard to not admire.
And whatever Russell says, he's the greatest pound for pound fighter ever.
Oh, stop it. Stop it. But when you listen to Bryce and he answers your questions the way he does, you can see how fortunate I am at this stage of my life to be involved with a fighter with this kind of attitude.
He's a throwback.
Yes.
I'm the lucky one. And Russell, plug your ears, guys, but I'm the lucky one here. I think we all know that.
Yeah. Well, I got to tell you something funny, Bryce. I did a story on Russell, in this past year, and he advises a few other fighters. He didn't give me their names. He said, the only one that's good is Bryce Mills. And I hear one of them got back to him that he was a little annoyed about it.
Yeah, I got in trouble for that. I called the other guys so fighters. All people should never say that. He got mad at
me, Russell, for putting it down. I was just quoting him. Come on.
Yeah, terrible thing.
And Russell, he's the best looking guy you've ever been controlled. What a good looking guy.
Oh, I'll take that. Thank you.
I give not to Benny Briscoe personally.
I wasn't around for Benny Bass, I don't think.
Yeah.
No, Bryce he speaks well. He looks good. You can be promoted as the kid next door. You have a lot of good things going for you, and you have that square jaw. So I'm assuming you can take a pretty good shot.
I try to work on the jawline and keep that thing nice and tight because you got to look good and you got to take a punch. Those are two things you need in this sport.
Speaking about the kid next door, the last fight he had was 3 blocks from his house.
Crazy.
Wow.
Really?
Fighting in your own backyard.
Wow. Okay, we're going to let you guys go because we only have a few minutes left, Frank and myself. But we had a blast, with Bryce Mills. Junior welterweight. I'm going to add on one word down the line. The word contender is going to be next, and then hopefully champion after that. And legendary promoter Russell Peltz, who's a manager now. He doesn't promote anymore, but one of the all-time great promoters, guys. It's a real pleasure having.
And Bryce, you have a good. You have a good manager. You have a really good head on your shoulders, and you know what? Hard work and dedication will take you real far, and you have control over that. And I'm going to follow your career from now on because I like you. I'm pulling for you, and I can see why Russell, at this stage of his career, will invest his time in someone and back someone like you. Best of luck to you.
I really appreciate that. It's been an honor. Thank you, guys.
Okay, guys. Thanks a lot.
Russell hates boxing.
I hate the business. Okay, thanks, guys.
Thank you.
See you later.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Russell. Okay, so Bryce Mills, Russell Peltz on there. And, very impressed with Bryce Mills.
Kid's got a good head on his shoulder.
Very well-spoken. And, those are the type of fighters who helps the image of the sport, not, the vulgarity we hear, but I also understand, like Bryce said, you have to hype a fight sometimes to a certain extent. You have these face-offs during the show, you talk to one another, even though fighters, even when they want to be respectful, they sometimes cross a line not meaning to per se, because in a certain sense they feel they have to.
But Jack, at
But
this kid's point, that's not his job yet. That'll come. Where he's at right now, he has to keep his nose to the grindstone and think of that. The day will come for the big media show and for him to worry about his brand. But I don't really think he needs a brand. I think going by the way he carries himself, the way he speaks, and his look and his demeanor, I think that's his brand right there.
And it was interesting us having Christy Martin on last week. We did touch on her being a promoter, naming some of the fighters. But it's interesting to hear Russell Peltz saying that's the one promoter they would actually feel comfortable going with.
I think it's trust, Jack.
Yeah, but it's going to be hard to be completely independent. We know the way it works in boxing. Russell said it best. They want to be independent as long as they
can.
Yeah, like certain fighters, if you have like a Sugar Ray Leonard, a mega star, an Oscar De La Hoya, those guys can stay maybe independent throughout their career. But even they had promoters for a while.
Scotty, that's the same thing I saw in him. Intelligent, telegenic, and likable. That goes a long way. And based on what I've seen of his bouts, he's exciting. He comes to fight. He throws punches. He's not wild. He has a form. He has good form. And he can only improve.
He can fight. And him not having an amateur background. I mean, people don't consider how important an amateur background is. He basically, those beginning fights were his
Earlier amateur fights. Marciano only had 12 amateur fights, Jack, and he lost 4 of them.
Yeah, people don't talk about that really. But Frank, okay, that's basically with that. And good show. So in this weekend, Lamont Roach, Isaac Cruz, who are you picking in that fight?
Well, I don't know, Jack. That's a tough one for me. How about you?
Well, based on Lamont Roach's draw with Tank Davis, I gotta feel he beats.
That makes you lean that way but he did better with Tank than Cruz did, right?
Yeah, but Isaac Cruz brings relentless pressure. He comes at you. Can Lamont Roach slow him down? Keep him at the end of the jab.
I'm going to go with Roach, Jack, just thinking back now to their fights. I just think that Cruz is very, very vanilla. He's not a big puncher. You're right. He's very aggressive and durable. I'm thinking Roach can put it together and probably decision him.
Yeah. Oh, and by the way, this slipped under the radar. Manny Pacquiao promoted a show in the Philippines where his son made his debut.
And he got a draw.
With a draw, So, I mean, they piggyback off names to an extent, and we can, kind of understand that. But, look, I mean, it doesn't mean the kid can't be a world champion someday because you have a draw. I mean, look, Bernard Hopkins, the Philadelphia guy, lost his first pro fight. I mean, it happens.
Aguayo lost his first pro fight. Yeah, that happens.
Muhammad Qawi did as well.
He also did, yes.
Yeah.
Jack, you know what, though? In closing, we only have a minute left. If you were a fighter and you achieved the level that Manny Pacquiao did, would you want your son to box? Knowing how few make it and how ugly and dirty the game can be, would you want your son to go through that? I don't think I would.
Yeah, well, we don't really have the time on that, but no, I wouldn't. But Pacquiao, look, he came back to the ring at age 46 and performed well. So obviously, he's either loves the sport or is addicted to it. Okay, I guess we ran out of time. Just congratulations, Frank, on your Dolphins down a winning streak, 3 in a row, and in the hunt for the playoffs. And maybe next week when we talk,
Jack is a comedian. He knows the Dolphins are going nowhere near the playoffs. And if they
Okay,
get
guys.
there, they're chicken fodder for the first team they play.
Okay, until next week, everyone out there, have a good week.
Thanks for watching, everybody. See you next week.